Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. And like a lot of longtime Canon shooters lately, I too recently started migrating over to Nikon. And I assume if you're anything like me, part of any transition to a new system is to find lenses that fulfill similar roles that you had with your previous system. Well, one of the things that I really needed was a macro lens for some of my close-up and detail work in a lot of the weddings that I do. So I started looking for a macro lens, and I ended up actually taking the advice of Theoria Apophasis, also known as the Angry Photographer, also known as Ken Wheeler. And I went out and bought the Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro lens. So, was it a good recommendation? Well, let's find out. Okay, so first up is build quality. And like virtually every Tokina lens I've ever previously used or tested, the 100mm f2.8 macro is built way beyond its relatively low price point. It's made mostly out of metal, and it's reasonably lightweight, coming in at just over 1 pound, which means it balances perfectly with the D750 that I haven't made it to here. The focus ring is rubberized and really fluid, though it's not all that well dampened. Tokina has implemented this autofocus manual focus clutch mechanism, which in the past, with previous Tokina lenses that I've used, it's been hit and miss depending on the lens. For example, it wasn't all that well refined and it was poorly implemented with the 16-28 f2.8, but I'm pleased to say that it works extremely well with the 100mm f2.8. And the manual focus is nice because it comes in handy in macro situations. The focus limiter switch here moves easily and clicks into place as it should. It too works really well. Now on the inside, there are 9 elements arranged in 8 groups, and there are 9 aperture blades for some buttercream smooth bokeh rendering. Speaking of the aperture, it ranges from f2.8 to f32. It's also a true 1-to-1 macro lens, which means you can focus on something that's basically the same size or as small as the camera's sensor. That's really close. Now on the downside, contrary to its otherwise spectacular build quality, the lens is sadly not weather sealed. It also doesn't have a silent wave or ultrasonic type focus motor, so focus speed is far from best in class, but it's adequate. And in macro, you're often manually focusing anyway, and the manual focus in this lens is easy to use and extremely well implemented. Overall, it's built way above its price point, and it's essentially perfect except for the lack of weather sealing. So for build, the Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro gets a very solid 9.5 out of 10. So next up is autofocus speed and accuracy. Now I've used a lot of Tokina lenses, and for all of their accolades for build and optical quality, the one area where they're sort of behind the competition is with focus speed. Not so much focus accuracy, mind you, just focus speed, and unfortunately the 100 is no exception. Like previous Tokina lenses, the focus motor is buzzy, audible, and it's kind of slow, which frankly would be fine if you're just going to use it for macro photography, when truthfully you're often going to be implementing manual focus and live view a decent chunk of the time anyway. And manual focus with this lens is smooth, quiet, easy, and just excellent. Now in fairness to Tokina, the other obvious use for this lens is portraiture, where slower focusing isn't necessarily going to be a deal breaker either. Now as for focus accuracy, well, with my D750, I find the accuracy to be spot on and deadly accurate. In fact, it's almost perfect. Now it hunts just a little bit in macro situation, but in those situations I revert to manual focus and I've had very few issues. So to sum up the AF speed and accuracy, it's not the fastest nor is it the quietest, but it's adequate and it gets the job done for its intended purposes. I just wish it were a little bit faster and a little bit quieter. So for AF speed and accuracy, the Tokina gets an 8 out of 10. So next up is optical quality and the quality of the results. We already told you that it has nice build and adequate autofocus speed, but how are the optics? Well, optically, the Tokina is exceptional, especially for something that's so relatively inexpensive. Truthfully, it's exceptional anyway, but its price tag makes it awesome. I'm getting excellent center sharpness where it really counts, and decent edge performance, and great, I mean gorgeous, autofocus bokeh rendering, beautiful color, and awesome macro capability. Not to mention the added benefit of what many photographers consider to be the perfect focal length for headshots and portraits. Now, I've used it for both, and I can tell you I think it's fantastic. Now, if there's a downside, like previous Tokina lenses that I've used, the 100mm f2.8 macro suffers a bit more from noticeable chromatic aberrations than other lenses in this category, but that too isn't such a big deal anymore, as most software today can handle the bulk of chromatic aberrations with just a few clicks, like Lightroom for example. But, as with all of my reviews, rather than me talking about the optical quality, it's probably better if I just show you the optical quality. The next 2 to 3 minutes will be a series of stills and video clips showcasing the optical quality of the Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro, and this Tokina lens really shines. Okay, so last up is value. And as you might have already guessed, at only $379, I think the 100mm macro from Tokina is nothing short of a sensational value. Fantastic build, adequate focus speed, excellent implementation of manual focusing for macro shooting, sharp optics, etc. There's just a whole lot to love about the Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro, so for value, to me it's a grand slam, and as such, it is easily a 10 out of 10 for value. So to wrap up this review, we gave the Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro lens a 46.5 out of 50 and our highly recommended rating. So to answer the original question, did the angry photographer make a decent recommendation with this Tokina? Yup, he sure did. Thanks, Angry, as without your recommendation, I would have most likely picked up the much more expensive Nikon 105mm f2.8 micro, which granted has vibration reduction, but it's also more than double the price. The final word, if you're anything like me and you've recently changed systems to Nikon, and you need a high quality, good value macro lens, then look no further than the Tokina 100mm f2.8 macro, with its excellent combination of fantastic build and great optics, both for macro and portraiture, and all for the very reasonable price of $379. It's really hard not to highly recommend a lens like this. Tokina has historically done a great job offering third-party glass with superior build and great optics, and all for very reasonable prices. And the 100 f2.8 is exactly that. I just wish the focus motor were a bit faster and a bit less buzzy. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography, based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.